How you doing, guys? Back again with another video, and in this one I'm going to show you how I color correct or color grade smartphone footage. Now I know from using a smartphone now for quite a while that it's a tricky process, and I'm going to say now, like, my smartphone footage that I color correct, I'm not the best at it in the world. I'm always learning, but I just thought I'd make this just so you might find it interesting and you might actually learn something for yourself. But yeah, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, because everything I do on the channel is shot just using a smartphone, no DSLRs allowed. So yeah, let's jump into it. So first of all, let's open up DaVinci Resolve. Now, like I said, DaVinci Resolve for me has been one of the programs that I've gravitated towards the most, just because of how many features are packed into this piece of software. There's lots and lots of tools that will help you get correct exposure. A few little tricks of the trade that you might say, by creating power windows and giving the background a little bit of blur. But yeah, there's just so much fine control that you can get out of DaVinci Resolve. So first of all, I'm going to come and I am going to create a new project. Now I'm just going to call this project color grade test. Oh, right. So now I'm in a new project. I've got a new project open here. I haven't set what frame rate my timeline's going to be or anything like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect Command and I, which is going to bring me to import my footage. And let's just go, say, to the Sandmarc video that I done the other day. Let's open that up. I'm going to highlight, select all of my clips in that folder and click Open. Now it's going to ask me change frame rate. Select the clips that I have of a different frame rate to the one that's predetermined, shall we say, by DaVinci Resolve. So I'm going to click yes, change to that. I will change a few settings later, but for now I'm going to do this. So first of all, let's start off with this footage here, which is shot on the Sony Xperia. But let me go back to this and just bring up some of the other footage. Let me bring some iPhone footage in, actually, from the how to connect a monitor to your phone video. Right, this is all iPhone footage. Yep, cool. So I'm going to bring that in as well. So I've got iPhone footage that I've just brought in, and I've also got all of some Sony clips as well that I've brought in. So, okay, we've opened the timeline, we've imported our footage, a few settings that I want to go and change. So if I go down to the bottom here, there's a little cog, and my master settings is my timeline resolution is 1920 by 1080. I'm going to leave it at that. Even if I'm outputting in 4K, I'm still going to leave it at that, because it's going to help my system or my computer to be able to handle the files and effects that I put on it and still play back smoothly. If I start trying to have my resolution on my timeline at 4K, my computer's got to process all of the 4K and all the effects and everything to play it back smoothly. So it just gives me a smoother playback if I leave it at 1080p. I can change that before I export. Not a problem. Now, if we go to color management, here is some settings that I like to change, especially if I am dealing with the HDR footage that's coming out of the Sony. These are some of the settings now that you're going to want to change. And it's probably going to apply very similar method to the iPhone 12 Pro Max with its HDR or Dolby Vision, so we say. So instead of having the color science as DaVinci YRGB, I'm going to go to DaVinci YRGB Color Managed. Now, Resolve Color Management preset, I don't want to have it at Rec 709 because my footage from my Sony Xperia is 2020. So let's go down to DaVinci Wide Gamut. And then my output color space, I'm going to output at Rec 709 to be uploaded to YouTube. So I'm going to leave that Rec 709 at Gamma 2.4, and then I'm going to click Save. So let's start off first by color grading some iPhone footage, and then we'll color grade some Sony footage, and I'll show you the difference between the BT 2020 from the Sony compared to the SDR Rec 709 footage that comes out of the iPhone. Now, the iPhone footage that I'm using is 8-bit from the iPhone 11 Pro Max, whereas the footage I'm coming from the Sony is 10-bit BT 2020 HDR. So, iPhone footage first. Let's do this shot here. So I'm going to bring that down into my timeline, come over to my edit tab, zoom in, Command plus, and we've got a shot here. So this is typically what you're going to be seeing coming straight out of the camera with your phone. Now this was shot in, it'll come to me, Beast Cam from Beast Grip. So I'm just going to bring this footage in now, and I can see here, this is the type of colour look you're going to get. And this is what I mean by, if you haven't watched my video about why I won't be getting the iPhone 12 Pro Max, then definitely go and watch that. But this is the reason. Can you see how contrasty this image is? The blacks are so black. It's just a very, very contrasty image. And if we go into the colour page now, which is on the tab down the bottom here, and you'll see like a little colour wheel, we've got our footage here. So with DaVinci Resolve, you have nodes. Now, when I first started using the nodes now, I thought they were really tricky and hard to understand. But, you know, once you just learn and watch a load of videos from people using them, you'll soon get the hang of doing it. So I've got my first node here, which I like to use for noise reduction if I'm using any noise reduction, or if I'm going to be using any sharpening. That will go in a separate node at the start as well, because when I'm using the noise reduction, I don't want to have the noise reduction at the end I want the noise reduction to work with the most cleanest image possible, and then I can affect it afterwards. So I'm going to leave this one up here for noise reduction if I plan on using any, which I think, looking at this shot over here, I might. So I'm just going to press Options, SSS, and just put a few serial nodes up here. Right, so I'm going to go into my second node, bring that down, and first of all, I want to use this node as my white balance corrector and exposure. So I'm going to go into the wheel down here. I'm going to make sure that I am using my lift, my gamma, and my gain. And so with my white balance node, I'm going to look down here, and I'm going to have my scopes up. Down the bottom here, I've got my scopes, and I'm using my parade. I like to use my parade. That gives me the same information as I would on a waveform, but I can also see my red, my green, and my blue channels now. Now, if I'm looking at this here, this waveform is looking pretty damn good, to be honest with you. There's not really too much. If I go into the waveform itself, I can see that the white balance on this is not too bad at all. So I'll mess about with the temperature sliders and bring that to there a little bit. So I've cooled that down a little bit. Now I'm going to go to my tint, and I want to mess about with that a little bit, about there. So what I've just done here is I've corrected, and if you look on the waveform here, you'll see that there's 3 little dots here that I have tried to line up across this line here. Now if I click that on, off, sorry, and on, off, and on, you'll see how it's affected the white balance there. And we've cleaned the image up, we've cooled it down a little bit, it's a little bit more neutral, and that's going to give me sort of a good idea of where to start from. So now I've sorted that out, I'm going to jump over to my next node and use this node as my exposure. Now if I go into my gain, this is the highlight slider. If I pull that down, you can see it pulls the highlights down. If I raise it up, you can see it raises the highlights. And you can just see when I raise that up there how noisy this image is. You know, it's very, very noisy. So I'm just going to pull my highlights down to... I'm going to have some light clip in there. So I'm going to go... I want to try and preserve those highlights. So you can see there that at the top of the highlights across here, nothing is been clipped. The information is still there. If it had been clipped, it'd just be like a solid line that goes through there. So if I was to pull it up, you can see how it's gone like a solid line there. That's clipped, that's information that's completely lost. I'm not getting that back. But if I pull my highlights down, you can see We have no dead straight lines, which means all the information has been retained in this shot. So I don't want to clip anything, so I want to pull them highlights down to where they're roughly sitting in between about 896. I want them just below or in between this line here. I could pull them down maybe a tad more. I'm pretty happy with that. Now my midtones I am going to raise up a little bit, and I just want to keep checking on that waveform that I'm not clipping anything. And if I bring my midtones up too much, you can see it clips again on the highlight. So it's a fine balance between your highlights and your midtones. Now I'm going to bring my highlights down again a little bit. Now you can see here on the bottom graph there, the shadows, they're completely gone in the red and green channel there, and even some in the blue there. It's just a dead straight line. If I lift the shadows up, you'll see we lift the shadows, but you can see that there's a lot of information down here that's just dead straight line still, that is image or information rather, that I've completely lost. So it's just about a fine balance of getting it to where you want it to look, really. It's not no rocket science, it's not no dead or set way that you should do things. It's all about the way that you want it to look. And I feel like, you know, sometimes when you're first starting out, I'm guilty of this. You're color correcting footage and you're trying to do everything as scientific and by the book as possible. And when you watch other people's videos, they talk about, you know, getting your white balance and lining all the channels up and stuff like that. And that is great. There's so many different lines in here. It's a job to know which ones you want to go and which ones you want to line up. Just get it as evenly looking across the board as possible, and you're going to be very, very close and in the ballpark figure of where you want to be. And then you can change it and create it to create your own style, but that will give you a good starting point. Don't try and be too scientific with it, because you'll end up getting yourself into this rabbit hole and never being able to come out again. So again, just little touches are good. Just make sure when you're filming in the first place, set your white balance correct in the first place. You're not going to be far out, and you might just have to do a tiny little bit of tweaking. Tiny little bit of tweaking is all we want. So yeah, like I said, now back to the shadows here. You can see I've lost a lot of information down there, so there's nothing I can do to gather that information back. It is brightening the image up a little bit, but I'm going to reset that now, and I'm going to go into my contrast slider and see if I can boost it up with a contrast a little bit there. And I feel like just boosting the contrast up there is more of a pleasing look than raising the shadows. I'm also going to go over to this here, which is the pivot, and what this will do is crush it or open it right up. And this is, again, contrast and pivot is something that you just want to mess about with and play. So you might raise your pivot a little bit, so you have to decrease the contrast a little bit. It's a game of back and forth, really, with this, to make it whatever you want it to look right. So I'm going to go about there. I think that looks pretty good there. So what else could we do with this shot? Maybe I might go into my next node now, chuck a bit of saturation back into this image a little bit. You can see there, which is looking nice. A little bit more saturation, not too much, but just a little bit there. And my main focus here in this shot is going to be the phone in the beast cage and the monitor. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another node, which is options S again. And now I'm in this node, I'm going to go down to here to my power windows. Now this power window means it's going to create this circle sort of box around wherever I put it, or I could have a box, or I could have a straight line. I could have a pen tool, which I can pen tool wherever I want it to draw it around, but I normally just go for this, and I am going to stretch this out. So I'm going to zoom out on this clip a little bit to maybe 25%. Pull that right up, pull that out to about there. I want to put it just at a bit of an angle, just so it doesn't look so uniformed and obvious that it's there. Again, keep that there so everything's in. Then I'm going to go down here to my softness, soften that right up. Now if you have a look at this little window here, you can see now I've put this circle power window over that section. All it's doing is affecting what's inside this window, but I don't want to affect the inside of the window. I want to affect what's on the outside. So what I'm going to do is go down here, click this button, and it inverts it. Now if you look back in this window here, the section that I've got this main circle over is greyed out, and the rest of the image can be affected. So once I've done that, I'm going to go into my curves, make sure these are all checked. Just click in the middle here, and I want to pull down just a little bit. And you can see what that's done there if I put it on and off. That's off, that's on. We've just sort of brought the focus more into the object or what I'm trying to showcase. I want your eyes to automatically be drawn towards the monitor and the phone rather than sort of wandering about the image. So I tend to do a lot of vignettes. That's basically what it is to my images, just to make what the thing that I'm looking for. And if I wanted to, I could then hit this, so right click on this, and I could add a node, and I could add an outside node. Right. So what the outside node does is it creates basically a copy of this node, but instead of affecting the area that was on the outside on the first node, this affects the area on the inside. So now if I was to click onto this node here, what I tend to do here is in my curves, again, I unlink these, so I'm only affecting the brightness and the darkness. I'm not affecting the red, the green, and the blue channels. And I'll go down to editable splines, hit on my highlights there, and I'll just bump that up a bit. And you just see it just bumps the highlights up just a tad on there. I could go right up, right down, right up. You see, that's just affecting that area there. So I just want to just get that about there. And really the key to sort of colour grading is a lot of little adjustments equal to a great adjustment. Don't just go crazy and think, right, I want to really pop that out, boom, bosh that up. Saturation, bosh that right to the end there. You just want to do little adjustments, and then at the end you'll have something that looks really nice. If you go too wild with everything, you're going to end up with an image that just doesn't look great. Especially with iPhone footage, you know, it's 8-bit, it's just not got the information there. It's a small sensor. We haven't got the flexibility there to be able to really push this image. So now I've done that, I'm just going to click Options and S to create another node here, which is... So this is the image we've got here, and if I turn the whole thing on and off, you'll see that's how we started off. It looks really sharp, it looks really digital, shall we say. It just doesn't look nice. The blacks are too black, they're just way gone, they're too crushed. But if I turn it back on, you can see now we've got more of a softer, more of a pleasing image. Just looks a little bit more professional. Now, another thing, I could do some other bits and pieces to this image, but I feel like with just these few simple things that I've done there, it's made a big overall impact. And then the last thing that I will do, because there is a lot of noise in this image, is I'll just click over to my first node again, which is my noise reduction node. And I will just go down to the noise reduction tab here. Let's zoom in on this first though, so let's go in 100%. And you can see here at 100% there is a lot of noise. Let me just go in 200% because I really want you to see this noise here. Come out to the effects there. I'm just going to make this bigger. Turn these clips off as well. Right, we've got it bigger now. So you can see there's a lot of noise in here. So I like to go in really, really tight so that I'm not going too crazy with the noise reduction. So temporal noise, frames, I normally just go to 3. I don't know why I go to 3, that just works. Temporal threshold, I am going to just adjust this, which is chroma and luma, and I'm going to just adjust it up. I'm going to keep going until I see that go to where I want it to be. So 40 might be a bit too much. Let's go back down again. So now I'm on 3. Let me go to 24. So I'm going to go 24.4, just because on this particular shot I feel like that's where it looks good. I've zoomed into 200% now, so it's a big crop into this image, and I can already see that it's cleared up. Let me just turn that on and off again, just so you can see. So just turn it off. Oops, turn it off. And you can see there's a lot of noise around here. Now let's just turn it on again. And you can see that's really cleaned that image up. Now I'm going to go back out to fit. And overall now you can see that we have got a really nice clean image. Looking really good. There we go, back there. So yeah, now we've got a really nice clean image. Now, like in this shot here, you can see it moves. So when if I just click on this here, this could, I mean, it's potentially, I mean, it's done really, really well to stay in position there. There's not a lot of movement there, but just say the shot moved quite a bit and this area was coming outside this circle here, I could always go to the tracker and I could track back. Oops. Where am I going here? Motion effects. Oh, tracker. Sorry, I was in the wrong one. So I could go to the tracker here. Now I'm into the tracker. And I could track backwards, which is going to track that area there. And then if I track forwards to the clip there, it's going to track and it's going to lock on to the subject there that I have in the frame. So it's always going to be in that area that I wanted it to be in. And then if I go back now to here, now that it's tracked, that stays with the phone and the monitor where I want it to stay, which is nice. Just turn the power window off. And you can see it's playing back because it's fairly choppy because of the noise reduction. That was a really powerhouse. But it's tracked it. And overall, I think where we started off, if we just bring it back. Oops. Where we started off was here. I don't think that's that great. And if we turn that on, we've got a more pleasing image. I feel we have. I would say it's probably looking a little bit cool now. So I could go back into my node where I done my temperature and maybe just bring a bit of warmth back into there, a little bit like that. But yeah, that was iPhone footage. So there you go. You can see that was just sort of a quick overview on how I sort of color correct iPhone footage. So let's go back to the cut page again, or the editing tab, shall we say. And we have done our iPhone footage. So now I'm going to bring in some footage from the Sony camera. So let's go this shot here. Bring that in. I want to go, and I just come out of that a second, and I just want to click back on it. I just want to find a point where I just want to use it. So let's go, say there. So I'm going to click I for my in point. I'm going to pull it across to say there. I'm going to go out for my out point, and then I don't want the audio, so I'm just going to grab this little film tab here and just drop in where I've cut there. Right. Now you can see, if we go back into the color page, this footage now, compared to the iPhone footage, looks completely different. And this was because I shot this in a the Sony Venice look, I think. I'm pretty sure. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Now, if we go back into it, you can see here that there is a big difference in the iPhone footage. If we go back here to here, I've got to do more work with this Sony footage, and that's okay. I don't mind that. And you can see that on my waveform here, that everything is elevated. It's really up in this highlights here. The shadows are raised. Everything's really bright. So again, noise reduction node. I'm going to click options, SSS. I like to just do 3 nodes. I can add more in the future if I need to. Drop them down to here. So let's go into not my first node, but my second node, because that is my noise reduction node. Back into the second node, and I want to adjust the exposure and white balance of this image. So first of all, I'm going to go to my offset, and I'm just going to bring that right down. And you can see now I've stretched that image out, brought the shadows down to just above 0 where I want them to be, We've got my highlights, nothing's clipping. The highlights on the red channel are a little bit high, but nothing major. Now, another thing that I like to do with my Sony footage is because it's shot in HDR and the bright parts are bright, and if I'm especially when I'm using with the skin tones here, this is my last node. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Open Effects, and I'm going to type in false color. Drop that onto the clip. Now you can see that we have got, let's expand that, it's completely mad there. I just need to change this though quickly to a couple of bits, because this false color option in the Resolve 17 is camera model is for the Black Magic. So I want to go down to the plugin mode, and I want to use that as creative, and creative style I want it to be exposure guide. Okay, so now that I've done that, this gives me, there's other settings that you can mess about with there, but I just like to leave it at that, and it's worked good for myself. So the reason why I've got the false color at the end here is because I want that to always be able to affect my whole image. If I was to put it at the start and make adjustments, I would be making adjustments to this false color. So that's why I put it at the end, and then when I make an adjustment here, whatever is at the end goes on top of everything else, layers on top basically. So that will give me an accurate representation of what's going on in this image. And if you look at this image here, you can already see that the red up the top here means it's completely blown out, it's completely gone. And pink at the bottom here and dark blue is where you're losing detail, or there is no detail in the image. So for my skin, which is my hand, I want my skin to be roughly in between the 40 to 50 IRE. I could get away with going down a little bit, so say 40 to the 60 area. I want it to roughly live in about that area there, which is going to come out and look nice. So with my, I'm going to go back into my second node, which is my exposure node, and I can see here that the skin is completely gone. So I need to pull these highlights down, which is the gain. So grab this and I'll pull it down. You can see as I pull it down and pull it up, it's completely affecting the image. Now you can see there I'm red and yellow overexposed on my hand here. And if I pull those highlights down, you can see I start going into yellow. Then it starts going to grey. Now I'm going to pink. And I'm going to go sort of green to pink there. I think that's going to be good. And if I click that off, now you can see the image there. And if I click up here to see before and after, that was before, that is after. So I've adjusted my skin now, and I'm exposed for my skin, but the background here is looking rather dark. So what I normally do with this type of video is I'll start messing about with the contrast now. So I'm going to go up with my contrast, and then I'm going to adjust the pivot point and bring that up again. And then I just want to double check my skin again. It was still pretty good, and we're bringing a bit of this up here. So let's come back off of this node again here. And I'm pretty contrast again. I'm going to adjust the contrast just down a little bit. Shadows, I want to lift them just a tad. Now the mid-tones I'm going to bring up to about there. And now if I go into my false color, I just want to check the skin again. See, the skin is still, it's gone a little bit more over than I'd like, so it's still in that grey area there. So I might just pull those highlights down just a little bit more to about there. Let's take that off and see what that's looking like. Yeah, okay, so I'm happy with that. So now I have adjusted the exposure of my image. If I look at my waveform here, the overall waveform is red biased. The shadows, it's all leaning towards red, but I've got a lot of red. This is more of a reddy colour. My skin's red, so it will lean more towards that. And I'm just going to go into this second node now and just see what we like with white balance. So if I was to click the little eyedropper again down here and go onto here, you can see from the white in the background there is 97, 97, 96. So we are like bang on correct with white balance there. You can't really fault it. We can't get any better than what we are there. Well, you could get 97, 97, 97, but that is so close. There's just no need to mess about with the white balance on this image. So that's great. So what else would I might want to do to this image now I've got this looking the way I have here? So definitely this image needs some saturation put into it. So I'm going to grab my saturation and just pull that up to about there. I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to just go refer back. Yep, we're still good there. And you can see there we've got this image now is starting to look really nice. So what else could I do with this image to make it look a little bit better? Again, like I did before, if I click in options S, that brings me up another serial node, and if I was to just go into my power windows here and grab the circle, because I'm showing this lens off here, I might want to just do a circle window there, soften that right out. I want it as soft as possible. I want it to make, I want a nice subtle change. And again, you can see in this window here, we're affecting what's inside this. But if I click the button down here, which inverts it, you can see now we're only affecting the outside area. And I'm going to go again into my curves, link them back up. Oops. Need to turn off editable splines, turn that off, come back into my curves. You can see there, just pulling that down a little bit. Then I'm going to go here, I'm going to right click on that, add a node, add an outside node, which again has just added another node to the one that we've just done, but instead of affecting what's on the outside, this is going to affect the inside of that power window. So now I've got that on there, I'm going to go again back to my editable splines, click the highlights and just bosh them just a tad. And I'm just going to turn on my false color here because I don't want to go too wild with, you can see if I'd go too much there, I'm starting to lose detail over here, starting to blow out, starting to lose the highlight detail. So I only want to do minimal changes. And this is just a balance game. I just want to do just a little bit, and let's just go back to that and just check. Yeah, I might go back into that again, that node first, back into my power window. I might just make that a little bit smaller. I don't want to affect my skin too much. So let's just go back to there, shrink it a little bit, and again bring my soften up. I want it just outside the frame. That's where I like to put it. I'm going to go back into my curves, and again this is just adjustments here, so I'll go back into that in a second. Let me just go into the node that affects the inside area again now, and then I can just tweak that maybe a little bit. About there. Maybe I want to make some adjustments to the mid-tones a little bit. I just want to brighten maybe the shadows a little up a little. No, I think, yeah, that's about good there. I'm going to go back to the outside image, back to my curves again. Don't forget to turn off editable splines. And you see there, if I go down, we're doing a vignette, but I don't want to do that. I could go up. I just want to just a little bit. So about there. I think that's good. And again, that's pretty much how I would color correct or color grade a shot like that. So let's just go back up to here and see what it looked like when we first started, which was that. It looks an absolute mess, and how we've finished it off just by doing a few simple corrections to the image. Click that on, and we're good to go. I might just actually go back to my exposure here and have a look at this, and it's looking a bit dark actually after looking at it. So I'm just going to go back and just get the offset and just brighten the whole thing up a bit. Maybe not there, I might just go the mid-tones. Shadows. Come back out of there a minute. Shadows there. Just going to bosh those mid-tones up a little bit. Just make the image a little bit nicer to look at. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that now. Let's just go to the contrast, mess about that a little bit. Okay, there we go. There we go. I'm happy with that now. And let's just see what the noise levels are like on this image. So I'm going to go to my first node that I created up here, which is my noise reduction. I am going to crop in again on 200% and just have a little wiggle around and see what the noise level is like. I mean, it is really not that bad at all. I mean, you can see how clean this image is looking, you know? Even in the shadow areas here, it's pretty clean. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like this image needs any noise reduction on it at all. So I'm going to probably park it there. I might just click out here, click on the last node that I've done an edit to, Control S. So this is going to be my final node that I'm going to use now. Oops. Command Z, get rid of that. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is go to my first node that I've made a color correction to, and I want to add a node, add a serial before, which is going to be here. And what I would normally do is use this as a sharpening node. So I want to sharpen the image, the raw image, before I've corrected it. I don't want to be going towards the end of the image and sharpening stuff that I've corrected and messed about with and manipulated pixels. I want fresh, clean pixels to sharpen an image with. So I'm going to go to my first node, come over here to my thing here. So you've got blur. I'm going to go to the sharpen tab. Oh. Yep, sorry, sharpen tab here. And I'm just going to, you could raise it up, which blurs it, or you can pull it down to sharpen the image. And you can see there, that's really, really sharp. That's really, really blurry. So I'm going to go to about, I reckon 40 looks good there. And if we just turn that on and off, so that's off and on. And I'll just zoom in onto this lens here, just so you can see, not 200%, 100% onto the lens here. Now if I turn it off and on, you can see it's just sharpened that up a bit. If I go back to fit, you can see now we've got a nice, sharp, clean, crisp looking shot. So if I go back to the edit page here, you can see these are the two shots we've got, that and that, and you can still see with these two shots that we've just messed about with the Sony footage, and the Sony footage from the Xperia 1 Mark II, it just looks more like more of a soft filmic look to it, whereas the iPhone footage here still looks really, really contrasty. Blacks look really punchy and dark, and that might be the type of look that you're going for, but you know, still both of the shots look good, I think, but at the end of the day, it's just going to be down to your personal preference. But again, back over to there, it just looks more organic, the Sony shot does. And back to the iPhone footage. So I've just shown you two clips there, one from the iPhone 8-bit iPhone 11 Pro Max footage, and one from the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, which is 10-bit BT 2020 footage or HDR footage. So now that I've done that, again, like I said at the start there, we had our settings to a 1080p resolution timeline, because if I'm adding things like noise reduction, power windows to this footage, then it's going to take a lot of power processing to give you a clean playback. So now, before I would go to the little rocket down here, which is the export button, I am going to go to my settings cog down the bottom right hand corner, and I'm going to go to, oh actually, I'm going to go to my master settings, and I could change it to, say, 4K, 3840 by 2160, save that. So now that's changed that, and now we're in a 4K timeline. So that when I go to the rocket, and I click on the custom there, and if I go down, you'll see down here that the resolution is 3840 by 2160, and the frame rate is 23.976 frames per second. The only other thing that I normally change in the tab down here is I go to the advanced, and where it says data levels, I like to have it on video, and then I add to render queue. This will ask me, where do I want to save this project? For this demonstration, I'm just going to save it into my downloads, again, as color grade test. Click save. So now that's where, once I render this and export this project, that's going to save that to that destination. Now I'll go render all, and that's going to render the project out into the downloads folder. So yeah, this was just like a very, my first time doing anything like this. Very raw, very rough way that I like to color grade or color correct my footage. So yeah, I hope you've learned something from this and taken something away from it. But again, it's been a pleasure having you on the channel watching. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. Let me know if you'd like to see more on this type of topic, or if there's any suggestions that you have regarding filming or colour grading footage. Let me know in the comment section down below. Once again, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll just leave you with both of these clips in full screen. Take care.